This is Ben Bradley from Syracuse University.
And this is Dale Dorsey from the University of Kansas.
And we're going to talk about well-being and subjectivism and hedonism about well-being. I'll just say a word or two about what well-being is. So, subjectivism and hedonism are views about what makes things go well for somebody. So, what things are intrinsically good for an individual. And the most popular views about this, I suppose, are subjectivist views like desire satisfactionism, and hedonism, and perfectionism, and pluralism, which is the view that lots of things are intrinsically good for people. And Dale is going to start us off by defending subjectivism about well-being.
Thanks, Ben. I think that was really a helpful intro. So I will try to say a few things about why I think subjectivism, broadly speaking, is the right sort of view. Before that, I'll say a little bit about what I take subjectivism to be. Subjectivism, as I understand it, is roughly speaking the view that a necessary condition on any particular things being good for you is that you, again, roughly speaking, value that thing. So X can't be good for Y unless Y values X. That's incredibly broad and permits of a strikingly large number of different interpretations. Different subjectivists will differ concerning the proper valuing attitude. So there could be, in fact, two different dimensions of disagreement. Some hold that valuing attitudes are the actual attitudes that we have now, what we actually value. Some will hold that this particular valuing attitude has to be idealized in some way, so it's counterfactual or with full information or full experience of all the potential possibilities or something. Alternatively, another sort of dispute is that subjectivists will differ on what sort of propositional attitude really correctly characterizes the valuing attitude. So probably the most popular or most infamous subjectivist view is a desire satisfaction view, where the valuing attitude is taken to be desiring. That can also permit of these various idealized or counterfactual desire satisfaction type views. But you might construe the valuing attitude in different ways. You might take it to be a kind of cognitive attitude rather than a desire, or some other third kind of attitude. These are all compatible with the view that you espouse being, roughly speaking, subjectivist in the way that I define it, or the way that I think is plausible. Okay, so why would you believe such a view? Why accept subjectivism? And I think the reason that I'm most attracted to subjectivism is that I just think it's a general kind of principle of well-being, one that I find attractive, that for any particular thing to be good for someone, that thing had better not alienate the person for whom it's good. You better not hate it or react in a negative way, however you want to cash that out, to it. And if that's right, then it does seem to me that supports subjectivist reading of well-being, insofar as subjectivist views are just those views that say that what's good for you has to, in some way, be valued by you. It strikes me as odd to say, for instance, that learning about ancient Egyptian history or something is good for somebody if they don't value so doing, or so doing alienates them or something like that. And if that's right, I think there's at least some motivation to be taken from that in support of subjectivism on the wholesale. So I think that's roughly what I'd say. That's at least what pushes me towards subjectivism.
Okay, maybe I'll just press you on that a little bit and ask you for a little bit more about the resonance condition. So you might think that the resonance condition can't really provide independent support for subjectivism, because after all, what is it to say that something resonates with you except to say that you value it or you desire it or something like that? And if that's what resonance amounts to, then the resonance condition is basically just a statement of subjectivism, right? So what do you think about that?
Well, I guess I think there are two different things I think you could say here. I think if you really finagled it, you could come up with a resonance constraint that didn't necessarily require a subjectivist view in the way that I understand it. David Brink has an article called The Significance of Desire, where he argues actually that the resonance constraint can be met by objective theories of well-being if we hold certain other kinds of principles about rational valuing. So if you believe that valuing has got to be sensitive to substantive principles of practical rationality. So in other words, if you believe that because something is valuable, that provides you substantive practical reason to value it, and you believe that the resonance constraint can be met by certain kinds of counterfactual conditions, like, for instance, that X is substantively rational in this way, then you might say that any particular theory of well-being could satisfy the resonance constraint in that way. I hope not to have painted myself into a corner too much here, but I think one of the things I'd say to that sort of possibility just is that I just doubt that kind of claim about substantive rationality, at least when it comes to valuing, is plausible. I guess I'm sort of an old school. I guess I have kind of an old school view on this, that do you have practical reason to value the things that you value? So I guess that's where I'd want to object to that kind of reading of the resonance constraint. But I think it's a position in logical space that somebody could take, and perhaps under the right conditions I could even be convinced that it might even be true. That's one of the reasons why I'm not such a fan of it.
Okay.
But the other thing I would say just is, I don't think I differ with you on your characterization of the relationship between subjectivism and the resonance constraint. I think that basically you're right, that there's a kind of table poundingness that the resonance constraint, or at least the resonance constraint as I would want to understand it, has in favor of subjectivism. But
right.
I don't think that makes it irrelevant or useless in assessing whether an objective or subjective theory of welfare could be true. Partly because I think it's just really plausible. I just think it's quite plausible to say, stated in this way. It's plausible to me, and I guess not only is it plausible, it does seem to me that that particular principle is more plausible than the claim that any one particular thing is or could be good for someone. So that, I suppose, is the way I would understand how the resonance constraint and subjectivism work. I mean, subjectivism just is in a sense designed to satisfy the resonance constraint. But insofar as the resonance constraint just appeals to me in this gut way, then that's what sort of compels me to go the subjectivist route.
Okay. So let me ask, because I think it'd be helpful to have a little bit more clarification about what makes a view, which views are going to count as subjectivist, because I think there are some views that we might think of as being subjectivist that won't count as subjectivist on your way of characterizing it. So, for example, to take desire satisfactionism. So there are a couple of ways we might formulate it, and you find both ways of formulating the view in the literature, and they're not always carefully distinguished. So the first way, we might call it the combo way, right? And according to this way of thinking about desire satisfactionism, what's good for you is a combination of wanting something and getting it, right? So if you want the Yankees to win the World Series and they win, then this combination of states of affairs, you wanting it and them winning, is intrinsically good for you, right? Whereas on the other view, I guess we could call it the object view, what's good for you is just the object of the thing that you want. So if you want the Yankees to win and they win, what's intrinsically good for you is just the Yankees winning, right?
Right. Yeah.
So these are they're different ways of formulating the view, but it seems like it shouldn't make too much of a difference which way we go, because it seems like they're going to rank lives in the same way. So suppose I want the Yankees to win and they win. Well, on the combo view, something good happened, and on the object view, something good happened, right? And so it seems like all the same good and bad things are going to happen on each of these views, and so lives are going to end up getting ranked in the same way. And so that makes me wonder whether we should really divide views into subjective and objective the way you suggest, because here we have two views that are going to give us exactly the same results, it seems like, but one of them counts as objective and the other counts as subjective. Why is that? Because no matter how you feel about the combination of your wanting something and getting it, that's good for you, right? So on the combo view, the things that are good for you no matter how you feel about it and no matter whether they resonate with you. Whereas on the object view, only those things that you have that you desire will be good for you. So can you say something more to defend the claim that this distinction matters?
Yeah, I think you've put it in exactly the correct way, and I do see the difference that you're pointing to here. I guess what I'd say in response is just that I think that there is a large and important difference between these two ways of stating, for instance, the desire satisfaction view, as you stated. I think the combo view is genuinely an objective view, and I think the object view is genuinely a subjectivist view, and it's not just a trivial difference. There really is a big difference in which theory we select. And I guess the way I would want to bring out the difference is instead of focusing on the rank ordering of entire lives, let's focus on the particular, what you might call, particular utility function, I suppose, that somebody might have at a given time. So in other words, those things that are good for somebody at a given time and the relative weights of those goods. Any theory of well-being ought to be able to tell us both the lifetime thing and also this more restricted thing. But if we look at the combo view's way of getting at the restricted judgment, that is the utility function at a time, you might just call it, the combo view has got to say that at any time in your life, no matter what your motivations or desires or whatever values are, the utility function at a given time is just all of those combo states, rank ordered depending, I guess, on the intensity of the desire in the combo state. I guess you could have a different way of rank ordering them, I guess. But the point is that all of those combo states are on there. For all x, I desire x and x. For every value of x, that's in my utility function at the time.
Okay.
But That seems wrong to me. I think that's an implausible theory of a utility function at a time. And the reason I think it's implausible, I think I don't know, I feel like I'm pounding the table here, but it does go back to that original judgment that led me to subjectivism. And, you could think of a simple example. Imagine that I really hate Kenny G. Imagine listening to Kenny G. Listening to Kenny G is the worst thing imaginable.
I'll try to imagine.
Yeah. So just imagine I have that kind of judgment, and I can envision a state of affairs where I want to listen to Kenny G and I listen to it, and that just fills me with utmost horror. That would be like the worst kind of betrayal of my values, the worst kind of disintegration of my sensibilities. If were that state to occur, I would just feel like, well, it's just over. So I could have that kind of attitude toward that state. But the combo view has got to tell me that state is good for me, and it's rank ordered in exactly the same way as every other combo state is rank ordered. That seems to me too expansive an account of a particular person's utility function at a time. Now, you're right to say, one of the things you said in trying to press this objection is that both views will issue identical judgments of, a person's well-being score over a time. So, looking backwards, we might say that, somebody desired the Yankees to win the World Series, they won it. Both the combo view and the object view are going to give exactly the same welfare score, you might say, to that particular time. But I guess what I'd say in response is it really matters. I think in formulating a theory of well-being, it really matters not just the eventual scores you end up assigning to people or lives or times or whatever, but it matters how you come to those scores also. It matters what the theory is telling people is good for them. And for that reason, though you're right, necessarily if the combo view gives somebody a lifetime well-being score of 200, the object view will give the same score. I think it does really matter the way it comes to these scores, and I think one comes at it in an objectivist way, the other comes at it in a subjectivist way, and this is not just a trivial distinction, so I do think there is something important here.
Let me just ask, just to make sure I understand. So, let me give you an example, kind of like your example. So, suppose we have somebody. Let's say we have somebody who's deciding what kind of life to live.
Yeah.
And let's say they're deciding whether to become a philosopher or an artist. Okay. And they decide to become a philosopher, and so it's years later, and now they're a philosopher, and they're imagining what their life would have been like as an artist, and they think the following: they think, boy, I'm really glad I decided to become a philosopher. My life would be terrible if I were drawing things instead of spotting fallacies in arguments and deriving conclusions and things. Now, we got to be able to say that person is just wrong, right? If they had previously decided differently and they decided to go to art school, then they'd have different desires, right? But things would be going just as well for them, we can imagine, right? They'd be happy in art school. They'd be wanting to do nothing more than paint unicorns.
Yeah, sure,
right?
Yeah.
And as long as they were doing that, things could be going well for them. So if we were to say that, so it shouldn't turn out that things are going much better for them now, given that they chose the philosophy over art, than they would have been if they'd chosen art over philosophy. Right. But it seems like but it is true of this person that the art stuff just does not resonate with her at all. So it's, you might see this. the combo view, in a way, you might think better captures why we should say that things aren't going better for her, and why she's wrong to think that the philosophy choice was a better choice. Because had she gone the other way, she would have had a different desire, and that desire combined with what was happening would have been just as good for her. So go ahead.
Well, I guess I don't see why the object view has to come to a different conclusion here. I mean, if I were to say, were I to be an artist rather than a philosopher, my life would be going poorly. The reason, presumably, that we believe that I'm wrong is because were I an artist, I would have an artist's preferences. Were I an artist, I would want to be the artist.
Right.
And if
but how is this? But how is this different from the Kenny G case? So if you liked Kenny G, you would have different musical tastes, right?
Right.
But you don't want to say in that case that that it's good for you to want and get to want to listen to Kenny G and to be listening.
Right.
To him.
I mean, here's why I think that. I think I can say this. I hope I'm not saying something I can't say. But I think the object view can say, look, I can imagine a circumstance in which my values change from what they are now. I take different attitudes toward different things. And, if we take the altered values as given, what would be good for me given those altered values? In essence, what I'm doing is I'm imagining a world where my values are a different way, and then I'm coming up with a, I guess, utility function at a time for those values. And given those values, the utility function at a time I would have would be sensitive, at least on the object view, would be sensitive to those values that I have at that time in that particular world. So I think I can say that, and I think you could just say exactly the same thing about the artist case. But I think, I think what you're pressing on here is, is there? So maybe this isn't what you're pressing on, but one could say that, look, this is just further evidence that the object view and the combo view are not really all that different. But again,
they seem to be getting the same results.
Yeah,
in these cases,
I think really the crucial difference here is, given my values, what's good for me now, and the object view is going to ask, well, what is it that you value? And I introspect, I learn what I value, and I say, well, I value these things. That the object view is going to tell me, well, those things are good for you now. That's what you should go after. So if we assume the combo view is true, I ask, what's good for me now? The combo view says, it just hands me the printed out list, right? It just hands me the printed out list of all the combo states. And that I take to be a significant difference. I mean, you're right. I don't want to argue that there's a big there's something normative here that's different between the two views. I think a lot of the further conclusions that you would derive from a desire satisfaction view, you would derive exactly the same thing between one and the other. But what's really important, I think, is the explanatory principle. What explains why you end up with a particular well-being score. And the explanatory principle, I take it, is going to be different between both of these two views, and it's that one that I really think is different and important, I guess.
Okay, maybe I'll ask another question related to this well-being at a time stuff. So on the view that you're on, the version of subjectivism that you like, what's good for you is the things that you like, or the things that you have some pro-attitude towards, rather than a combo.
Right.
And I think that this does have some plausibility when we think about well-being at a time. So when we ask, let's say you desire something and then you get it, and we ask, well, when did something good happen for you? It would be natural to say at the time that you got the thing that you wanted, right? So when was it good for you? When did something, say you want the Yankees to win, and then they win? When did something good happen to you? It doesn't seem like anything good happened to you until they won.
Right. Yeah.
Right, and that's when the good thing happened. So that seems good, except there are some cases where that doesn't seem so good. So, for example, in cases of posthumous harm and benefit. So you want something to happen, you die, then the thing happens. When did something good happen to you? It seems like, at least the natural thing for the object view to say is that something good happened to you after you died. But then, are you committed to, or are you okay with the idea of your well-being level going up and down at times after you die?
Yeah, that makes me a little queasy. I agree with your judgments in those cases. You're right to press on this issue about welfare at a time, because I think this is really this is a touchy spot for subjectivists. I think what I, as a subjectivist, would want to say, and I think I'm sort of hemmed in here, and so I'll explain why I think I'm hemmed in. I think I want to say that the object of your desire is good for you, not at the time of its occurrence, but at the time at which you desire it. So that's the view I think I have to accept.
Okay.
So I'll wait for the reasons for thinking that's all wrong. But I'll just tell you a little bit about why I think I have to accept it. And if I'm going to accept as a motivation for my view the resonance constraint, or if I'm going to accept that intuition, in other words, I don't see how I could reasonably accept the time of object view, because it could be that my desires or values or whatever change over time. So, for instance, right now, I might want to climb Mount Everest in the year 2015. I have that desire. It comes to 2015, I get cold feet, or I become indifferent or whatever. If it's the case that we still want to say somehow that because I valued it, climbing Mount Everest is good for me, saying that it's good for me at 2015 seems to violate that alienation condition. At 2015, it alienates me. That particular thing alienates me. And so to say it's good for me at 2015 seems to just violate this constraint. So I think I had better say that it's good for you at the time at which you desire it, because that's really the only time when you can guarantee that it doesn't alienate you. I guess that's what I had better say.
Yeah, I guess you could go that way, or another thing you could say, I guess, would be to insist that the desire and the thing that the desire is about obtaining be concurrent. So in the climbing Everest case, you could say that, well, since you've lost the desire, nothing you do is now going to affect your well-being with respect to climbing Everest. So if not climbing Everest is no longer going to be bad for you, and climbing it is no longer going to be good for you at any time. Yeah. Right.
So this is a view that Chris Heathwood has proposed in a nice article. I'm also, I guess, that seems to me the sensible thing to say, but I'm not attracted to it. I guess I just have to admit that I'm not particularly attracted to it. Partly, maybe I'll just plug your book. I think the arguments that you have against this view in the first chapter of your book basically convinced me that this wasn't the way to go. Maybe I'll put why I don't think it's the right way to go. Maybe I think it's sort of similar to one of the things that you say. You can imagine, so let's imagine two different desires. I desire to climb, so imagine that at every moment of my life since reaching, I don't know, minimal adolescence or something, I've wanted to climb Mount Everest
Mm-hmm.
at any particular time in my life. I want it to be the case that in my life I climb Mount Everest, and I want that every day throughout my entire life.
Sure.
So let's say that I eventually do it. In the year 2015, I climb Mount Everest. Seems
Okay.
like that makes me better off. I continue to have the desire. The desire is concurrent, so on the concurrentist view, that makes me better off at that time.
Mm.
So far, so good. Now imagine
Yeah.
that I wake up in the morning and I get a desire to host a party tonight. I want to have a party. I want to have some friends over,
Yeah.
and I do it. We can imagine
Mm.
that these two desires are similar in intensity, right? So we can imagine that the desire to climb Mount Everest is no stronger than the really intense but more or less spontaneous desire to host a party that night.
Right.
But I want to say, I guess, that just in terms of my overall lifetime well-being, the first one just makes a bigger splash.
Mm.
It's more important to my well-being than the latter one, and the reason is because I desire it for not just the time when I actually get it, but at every other time also.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't just make me better off at that time; it makes me better off at any point at which I desire it.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, I recognize that the view that I want to push might seem a bit strange, and so you might say, well, is the counterintuition to the concurrentist view I just offered, is that any more strange than the time of desire view, the one I like? And I don't. Maybe not. I guess we could further discuss it, but that's sort of the reason that I'm.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure I gave that argument, but if I did, I think that's a pretty good one. But I'm not. I guess that sort of argument you might look for other explanations of why the Everest trip was better. It was made a bigger impact on your well-being than the throwing the party. So you might, for example, and within a subjectivist sort of view. So you might think it has something to do with the fact that you've organized your life around climbing Mount Everest, or you put a lot more effort into it maybe than into throwing the party, and you might think that that those things, rather than just getting what you want, are achieving a goal is really more important than just getting something that you want.
Yeah, you could say that. So you could have a kind of concurrentist desire satisfaction view that treats the fact that it was the satisfaction of a goal or the achievement of a goal as itself determinant of how good that particular desire is for you. I guess I could see that kind of a view, but I guess I would want to say that even if we abstract from those kinds of considerations, I just feel like the fact that I wanted it for so long, that's really the fact I wanted to focus on, not necessarily that it was such a difficult achievement or that I put so much effort into it or something. I mean, that I want to leave open the possibility that itself could make a difference, but I don't think that explains the intuition I had necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess thinking about these cases tends to lead some people towards hedonism, because you might think, well, why isn't it so good when I want something and then I stop wanting it and then I get it? Well, it's because I didn't enjoy it when I got it, presumably, if I stopped wanting it, right? Or why isn't it good for me when I want something and then I die and then it happens? Well, it's because I'm no longer able to enjoy the thing that happened.
Right.
And so it's you might be led to think that really it's the feelings of satisfaction or enjoyment that are important, and that when we think of cases where you want something and get no enjoyment out of it when you get it, maybe nothing good happened for you in that case. So you might be led to hedonism in that way. Of course, there are some cases where you might still think that it would still be good for you even if you didn't enjoy it once you got it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not obvious which way those go, but at least that, if you think that some sort of experience requirement is plausible for well-being, then you might be led to think that hedonism can account for lots of what you liked about these subjectivist views. I guess I'll say a couple things about why else you might want to be a hedonist.
Good, yeah.
So
good, yeah.
So presumably everybody thinks that pleasure is good and pain is bad, and then there are going to be different views about why that is. But at least it's initially plausible that those claims are true. You don't get very often anybody arguing with you about that. So why think that hedonism is true? Well, in many of these cases, so as I've been saying, if you get something that you wanted but you didn't enjoy it, it doesn't quite seem so good for you. If you say, if you know a lot of things or you've perfected some aspect of your human nature, that perfectionists think that this is intrinsically good for you, but if you don't enjoy it at all, it becomes hard to see why we should think of it as being a good thing for you to do that. And you might think that hedonism can account for at least some of the plausibility of the resonance constraint, right? Because things that don't give you any enjoyment are not going to resonate with you. So you might think that the reason that that we don't want to say that things are good for you if they don't resonate with you is that we think that you'd be getting these things and not enjoying them, right? So I think there's you can make a pretty good case for hedonism in that way. And then, of course, there are some other reasons that you might like hedonism. So the fact that it's simple is a nice feature, but it's not just because it's simple, but also because it avoids some pitfalls that other views fall into. So, for example, the problem we were just talking about well-being. Hedonists don't really have this sort of temporal problem. At least it doesn't seem that they do, because when is one of the good times in your life according to a hedonist? Well, they're when you're experiencing pleasure, right? So there aren't multiple plausible candidates for when the good thing would be for you. And that's because of the simplicity of the view. You just have this, the pleasant experience is the thing that's good. And there's another sort of problem. I'll raise this. This is partly an objection to some subjectivist views, but you might see it as indirectly supporting hedonism. So suppose that somebody has a positive attitude towards their own life going badly. Well, if say they desire to have a bad life, well, sometimes this is going to lead to a paradox, right? So if you desire that your life go badly, and your life would otherwise be going just barely badly, say, well, then you got something that you wanted, so that's good for you. So then your life actually is not going badly. So if your life is not going badly, if your life is going badly, then it's not, right? I'm kind of making a mess of this, but if your life is if your life is not going badly, right? If your life is going well, then you're not getting something that you wanted, and so your life is actually going badly. So if your life is going well, then it's going badly. So you have this kind of paradox, and you don't get this kind of paradox with hedonism, because it doesn't matter whether the things that you take pleasure in are true or false. It doesn't matter if you're enjoying the fact that your life is going badly or anything like that. All that matters is how much pleasure you're getting and how much pain you're getting. So those are a few reasons to like hedonism. I doubt that any of them is overwhelming by itself, but I think that together they make a decent case for hedonism.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think those are all very compelling sorts of points to make with regard to hedonism. Maybe I'll just say a couple things, just some pressure to put on some of these points. So one of the things you said, back sort of when we were talking about the Mount Everest case, you might say that really what's going on here is that the reason that you don't think it's good for you at the time of object is because you don't enjoy it at that time. And I think that's a well, anyway, it sounds plausible to me. I mean, that seems like a plausible thing to say. But there's a difference, I think, between saying that it's not good for you because you don't enjoy it, and saying that it's not good for you because it's enjoyment that makes you better off. It's the state of enjoyment that makes you better off. And so, while I think there's something to that intuition, I'm not sure that it gets you all the way to hedonism. It might get you to something like a certain interpretation of the valuing attitude. Maybe a certain kind of affective response needs to be in there, or something that might be a point that pushes in favor of that. But I'm not sure that gets you all the way to hedonism.
Yeah.
I wrote this down, so I'm going over what you said. My memory is
right. It certainly doesn't get you all the way to hedonism, and you could have a view where what's good for you is wanting something and getting it and enjoying getting it, or something like that, for example. That would be compatible with everything that I said there. But then I think you wouldn't really want that view for the other reasons that I mentioned. But and you'd be giving up something if you had that sort of view, because you'd be giving up. I mean, some people do find it plausible that there's posthumous harm, just not that it occurs at times after you die, right? So you'd be giving up any possibility of anything happening after you die affecting your well-being at any previous time, which some people, like Steve Looper and George Pitcher, have found to be plausible, Feinberg and people like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I remember the next thing I was going to say. One of the things you said that I think really is a kind of common motivation for hedonism is you might think that, the desire satisfaction view tells you that getting what you want is good for you, but a common thought really is, and this goes back thousands of years, really, the thought that satisfying your desires is pleasurable. It's just a fact about human psychology that getting what you want is pleasurable. And, we wouldn't say, and this is, I think, what you explicitly said, we wouldn't say that something that you got that you didn't enjoy was good for you in that way. And so that would put pressure on the subjectivist, because the subjectivist doesn't say that, well, I mean, I guess some kind of subjectivists might say, but for the most part, many subjectivists wouldn't say that there's any kind of enjoyment constraint here. We might add one. Just just as you mentioned, the last kind of subjectivist view, if we wanted to accommodate the previous motivation you said. But we just leave that aside. We generally think of subjectivist views like the desire satisfaction view as not having this kind of enjoyment constraint. So one of the things I think I'd say in response is, I don't know if I would want to say necessarily that if you don't enjoy it, it isn't good for you. What I think what I'm about to say, I think, is just explicitly table pounding against the hedonist.
Feel free to pound the table. Pound away.
So here it comes. What I think I would say is, look, the enjoyment here is not relevant. I would say that something isn't good for you if you didn't value it. But I can value things that I don't necessarily enjoy. So, for instance, imagine that I've got this kind of, I don't know, monkish attitude or something. Pleasure. Maybe I'm not an ascetic, but pleasure's just not that big a deal for me. I think, it's sort of maybe it's not a corruption of the body, but it's, neutral. It doesn't make you any better off. So I don't really value pleasure. And so I get something that I regard as being intrinsically worthwhile. Maybe it's some bit of knowledge or something, or reading some book. I don't take any pleasure of it, but nonetheless, I do value it. I value the getting of it and the having of it and all this. Don't enjoy it, but I don't necessarily want to say, I mean, it would strike me as too strong to say that if I had that kind of an attitude, that sort of thing wouldn't be good for me, just because I didn't enjoy it, partly because I don't think enjoyment really is important.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I guess...
So there it is. There's the table pound.
I mean, I can sort of see that, but I kind of... I tend to think of these kinds of examples of the monk who values something but doesn't enjoy it as being kind of tragic. That if only this person would enjoy something, they could have a good life. But tragically, they're valuing these things and getting them and failing to get any of the payoff from it. But if I didn't feel that way, well, at least the questions about what pleasure is, right? So if you have and it's worth talking about distinction between ways of thinking about pleasure. So we might think of the two main ways of thinking about pleasure as a feeling or sensation view and an attitude view. So it's common to think of pleasure as being a kind of feeling or sensation, along the lines of coldness or feelings of pressure or something like that, right? And if pleasure is that sort of thing, then you can imagine this monk valuing something and getting it, but not getting any special kind of tingly feeling from it, right? But if pleasure is an attitude, if it's a pro-attitude in the same sort of family as desiring something or hoping that something is the case, then it may be harder to imagine this monk valuing something and getting it, but not having any, not taking pleasure in it happening, right? Or being glad that it happened, right? That it seems a little bit harder for me to wrap my head around. It seems like the natural way to think about what's going on is that the monk is taking some attitudinal pleasure in this thing happening because he valued it. And if you think of it in that way, then you could say that, the monk is having a good life, even though he's not getting any sensations of pleasure because he's having all this attitudinal pleasure about the things that are happening that he values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't... I think that's a decent response to the case that I gave. So you might try to construe. I mean, one thing I might try to do is just construe, a different kind of monk. The monk that doesn't value. Well, okay, so there's a question of what the monk doesn't value. Right, so we could say that the monk doesn't value the particular tingly sensation, and if you conceive of the monk in that way, then the monk is subject to the monk example is subject to the response that I think you just gave, which seems to be good. Either pleasure is a kind of propositional attitude, the taking pleasure in X, or it's some kind of or conative state, having an experience that you desire to continue occurring, or whatever it is. So that, I think, if you conceive of the monk as not valuing the tingly sensation, you could still say, well, the monk is still taking pleasure, and wouldn't we imagine that that's essential for the monk's well-being? But imagine that the monk doesn't... It's not just that he doesn't value the tingly sensation. It's also that he doesn't value the propositional attitude. I mean, let's say I'm the monk. I just don't really care about taking pleasure in things. I'm just not that interested. What I want is enlightenment. What I want is getting closer to the deity, or whatever it is. And I'm not going to experience that. I'm not going to take pleasure in it. I'm always going to be unsure and scratching my head. And is this really occurring? But I want the enlightenment. That's what it is that I want. And I don't know. We take a possible world where the monk actually gets it. I don't know if I'd want to say that that's not an improvement for the monk. I'm tempted, if we do want to say something like pleasure is, whatever experience that's valued or whatever, then I am tempted to say that, the monk could be made better off in every case by pleasure, just because, well, it's an experience that was valued. That would be fine with me. But what I think the tension is for hedonism is not to say that pleasure is good. Just like you said at the beginning, I think everybody thinks that pleasure is a good thing. It would strike me as bizarre not to think so. But the pressure there for hedonism is not necessarily to account for the fact that pleasure is good, but rather to rule out all other things that might count as potentially good.
Right.
And in this case, I would want to say there are some things that count as potentially good. Why? Because the monk values them. I guess that's what I'd want to say in those cases.
Yeah, no, that's a reasonable point, and I guess it's in these kind of cases, sometimes I have a hard time telling whether the monk getting what he wants is good for him or good in some other way. We want all sorts of things that are not for self-interested reasons, right? And so there, you might say that in this case, the monk gets what he wants, but this isn't good for him. And in fact, you might think, well, the monk doesn't really even care about making things go better for him. Maybe he just views it as his duty or something to gain this enlightenment. I think there's some plausibility to it, to saying that it would be good for him, even if that's not what he was after. But it's not. It doesn't strike me as a knockdown argument, at least against hedonism. So maybe I can wiggle out of it in that way.
Yeah. No. That's. Yeah. I think that's fair enough. Like you, I'm very unsure about these cases. I think it's true that whether you accept, an explicitly subjectivist view, or whether you accept something more objectivist, like hedonism, or potentially a different kind of objectivist view, you're always going to have to contend with these various innumerable counterexamples that people could always offer about, well, what about this case? What if it lacked this but had this? And I think this is just the kind of thing that every theory has to sort of contend with. And so, just to come up with, even if it were the case that the monk sort of case told against hedonism, I mean, I agree with you that that wouldn't be a knockdown argument against hedonism at all, because it could still be that, its competitors fail for various whatever reasons, or despite the fact that there's a particular judgment against it, the weight of considered judgment tells in favor of it, or something like that. So I think that the idea of coming up with a knockdown counterexample in all these cases is sort of fanciful.
Yeah.
But
I wonder.
That's just.
Yeah.
So
we have a few more minutes, and I guess I wonder what you think about the kind of hedonism that I favor is, I guess, maybe the crudest kind of hedonism, where it doesn't really matter what you take pleasure in. It's equally good for you to get the pleasure. So this sort of Benthamite view that pushpin is as good as poetry. I'm sort of inclined toward that view, rather than a view where it's better to take pleasure in art than I don't know, eating a sandwich or something. Do you believe in any sort of restrictions on the sorts of things that it's good to value?
That's a really good question, and I go back and forth. I guess I'm tempted to say ultimately that I do, but in certain ways rather than other ways. So one way you could believe that there are these kinds of restrictions on valuing is to say that there's got to be something objectively good about what it is you're valuing. So Richard Kraut had that infamous article on desire where he says, look, the object of desire, in order for it to count as being good for you, has got to be objectively worth wanting. I think I wouldn't be tempted to accept that kind of a view. I mean, I take the analog on a hedonist kind of view would be a sort of John Stuart Mill type hedonism, where, taking pleasure in the, complicated mathematics problem is intrinsically better than taking pleasure in the, the tiddlywinks or whatever. I guess I would want to, like you, I think I would want to shy away from that sort of a position. But there's another kind of distinction that I think is sort of attractive, and that is that I think there's a distinction between what I would. So this goes back to something we talked about a little bit earlier, a kind of distinction between desires where the satisfaction of desire is an achievement. A long-term project or something, you might say,
right?
And the achievement of the desire or whatever valuing attitude is something more short-term. I think there is that kind of a distinction, and so what I would want to say here, this is just what I'm tempted to say, is that it's better to satisfy your desires insofar as, or get what you value insofar as it is one of the object of which is the satisfaction of one of these long-term projects, as opposed to, momentary goods. I take this to be sort of similar to the distinction that Parfit makes between summative and global desire satisfaction views. I guess I'm attracted to that kind of a distinction.
Okay.
Now, that wouldn't place any restrictions on what sort of long-term project you wanted to have. So if you wanted to be the grass counter, and you wanted to fulfill your project of counting blades of grass all the livelong day, I don't think I'd have any beef with that kind of an activity, so long as it it fulfilled this kind of lifelong unifying or whatever project, however you want to spell that out.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be value, it would be sort of structure, really, that I'm more interested in.
Right. Okay, great. Well, I think we're about at the end of our time here. So it's
great. Well, this has been incredibly fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been great. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
All right.
We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.